on Blackboard, on exam review documents, you should see exam review 1 document. Okay, so before we get started, a couple things. It will be a 50-minute exam, so you'll be able to complete it in the time of this class. It'll be worth 100 points. They'll be worth 35 multiple choice at 2 points each, and then 4 short answers at 7.5 points each, so that's 30 points. There'll be a bonus point. I don't know what that will be. It is closed book, closed notes, okay, so you can't use anything. So the 2 main chapters in this are Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, and it's not just Chapter 1 and 2 of your book because I added some material to it, right, that isn't in the book. But let's talk about Chapter 1, the importance of MIS. So what do you have to study for Chapter 1? You obviously have Chapter 1 of your text. You have every lecture that we did on Chapter 1 recorded. You also have PowerPoint slides. You have the classroom lecture. You have your own notes, and hopefully you can use those Google Drive notes that you guys collaborated on. Okay, so topics in Chapter 1. Okay, the definition of MIS. And when we talk about the definition of MIS, we specifically looked at those 3 components: what management means, what information means, what systems means, and how those come together, right? Management information systems are the use of information technology systems to create information for managerial decisions, right? And we kind of looked at those 3 things separately and said, this is what's happening when we talk about the field of MIS. So it's not very well known, but it does a lot of good things. We talked, generally speaking, and this wasn't in the book, but this was something we brought into it, we talked about systems thinking. Okay, systems thinking is a way of approaching things and saying, let's take this as a system and look at 5 main things. The purpose of the system. That's the reason the system exists. You know, why the system exists. Why does St. Francis University, if you look at it as a system, educate students? That's the purpose of the system. We also look at the inputs and the outputs. Inputs are the things that go into the system, and outputs are the things that go out of the system. So the purpose is the purpose to transform the inputs to outputs, whatever those things might be. A system without outputs but only inputs, what do we call that? What do we call that? A system with inputs but no outputs? We call it a black hole. A system with outputs and no inputs, which shouldn't really exist, is called a miracle, right? So all systems, if you do it right, should have a purpose, should have inputs, and should have outputs. Okay? The other things that go around that are a boundary and an environment. The boundary and the environment kind of go together. There are things that affect the system that really aren't part of the system but can affect it, right? St. Francis University, if suddenly the federal government said we're not going to subsidize college education anymore, there's no more subsidized loans, that would really affect our inputs, would it not? Or if, unemployment rate was 35%, that would really affect our outputs, would it not? Yes, it would. Okay, so there are things outside the system that can affect it. So you need to, and we do a little exercise that, right? We analyze some things as systems. So that's general system thinking. We also talked, and this was not in the book, but there's a handout in Chapter 1 about the 6 functions of information systems, of technical information systems. They all do, and we'll talk about this later, but they all need something to capture, right? They need to capture data. And the way we capture data are things like touch screens, mice, keyboards, magnetic card readers, retinal scanners, thumbprint readers. We need some kind of way to capture information. We need to transmit it. What's the main way we transmit things? Through information systems. Through network technologies. Think about transmit, think about network, like the internet, satellite, Wi-Fi. Those are all transmission technologies. Store and retrieve, think about hard drives, DVD drives, flash drives, anything that is, storage mediums. Manipulate means software, right? Changing things. Taking all this data and calculating an average. Manipulate is really software. And display, things like a printer, things like your monitor, any kinds of output, right? Any kinds of output are display features. And then finally, okay, not finally, but when we talked about, introduced this concept, this is from the book. We talked about the 5-component framework. This will definitely, all these things will be on here, but the 5-component framework probably more so than the other two. The 5-component framework is very important. We start on the left-hand side, and we have hardware, software, data, procedures, and people, right? We say it has symmetry. Why do we say it has symmetry, the 5-component framework? Why do we say it's symmetrical? Why do we say it's symmetrical? Why are hardware and people alike, and software and procedures alike?
Instructors and actors on both sides.
Very good. The things that do something are people and hardware, right? That's hardware is like the spinning DVD drive, the projector, the touch, right? Those things that people and hardware are actors. They do something. Procedures tell people what to do, they're instructions, and software tells hardware what to do. The bridge in the middle there is data. Okay? The bridge between those things is data. Now, when we look to push work, push things from the human side to the computer side of the 5-component framework, what do we call that process? We call that automation. We call that a high-tech solution versus a low-tech solution, right? High-tech solution is when we move a lot of the work from the human side to the computer side. And we also talked about, as part of that, self-service work systems, okay? Which are high-tech solutions. ATMs are an example of a self-service work system where you don't have to go to a teller anymore. You can get your stuff from, get your money from an ATM, right? Self-checkout lines are an example of a self-service work system. Pay at the pump is an example of a self-service work system, right? These are usually, anytime you order online, that's an example of a self-service work system because you need a person to help you with them, okay? Those are high-tech kind of solutions. What is the most important component of the 5-component framework? Most important component of the 5-component framework? It is. It is always going to be people because you can have the greatest technology, but if the people don't accept it, if they don't use it, they keep doing things the old way, it's a failure, right? So when we implement a new information system, it's very important to overcome what's called organizational inertia, the tendency to do the same thing over and over again. And we do that through training, through procedures, right? Through training, through buy-in, all those good things. We talked a little bit, we talked a lot about information and how important information is. Data is information. And we talked a little bit about characteristics of information. Good information is accurate, meaning it's correct. It is timely, meaning it's delivered at the time we need it. It's like, no one likes yesterday's newspaper. It is relevant to the task at hand. It is just barely sufficient, meaning it should not be too fine or too coarse. If it's too high of a level, it's called coarse, too coarse. If it's at too low level, it's called too fine. So it should be at the appropriate level, and it should be worth its cost. So those are characteristics of information systems. What's the difference between information systems and information technology? What's the difference between information systems and information technology? And the book says you can buy information technology, but you cannot buy information systems. What's the difference between technology and systems? A lot of times we use those two words synonymously, but they're really not the same thing. Give me an example of a technology. GPS is a technology, right? That's a technology. It's a standard. It's a thing that does something, but it's not an information system. GPS is a technology, but we can use that technology in various information systems. Like I don't know if anyone's ever played with a GPS golf cart, right? That's an information system, right? It has inputs and outputs. It uses GPS technology, but it's definitely an information system that uses that. You can't buy an information system because people are part of that. You can't buy people, right? That's not So you have to train people to use it. Self-service work system we talked about. What's the difference between push systems and pull systems? Push and pull. When we talked about information and reports, we talked about push versus pull. And where are we headed? More toward what? Push or pull systems? It's about reporting. Push versus pull. Yeah, we're heading more toward pull. Push is, the old school where, hey, you get a monthly report or a weekly report or a daily report. It's pushed to you. You don't ask for it. It's like your bank statement that comes out every month. That's an example of a push report, right? Push information. It's pushed to you at a periodic basis. Pull is you going out and saying, I want to see all my transactions that I did yesterday, right? Where you can actually go out and query it at any given time. Most systems have transitioned more toward the pull side of things, where we get the information as we want it. We pull it as we need it. Because of the new connectivity, we can do that more and more. What's the difference between hard data and soft data? What's hard data versus soft data? What's hard data versus soft data? So when we evaluated you as a student at St. Francis University, if we were going to admit you to St. Francis University, the enrollment management team used hard data and soft data. What was hard data they might have used? Hard data they might have used. Right, that's hard data, right? And information systems are very good at hard data, keeping track of hard data, calculating hard data. What might have been soft data, Aaron?
Did any sports or any extracurricular activities?
Or maybe they said, you know what, Aaron's GPA isn't great, or his SAT isn't great. They probably were. But they said, maybe they're not great, but you know what, I met with him, I had an interview with him. Boy, he seems to have, he's mature, he seems to have things going on. That's soft data, right? That's harder to capture in an information system. Soft data is, I just like to look at, it's the human element. Hard data is things we can capture. We could probably capture sports in an information. We can. We can say extracurricular activities, check, 4, right? We can capture that. But there are things we can't capture in information. We call that more like soft data, right? The kind of things that go around it. In this day and age, we're pushing more toward the hard data stuff. And I talked about, when you used to get a loan, a car loan or a mortgage, you used to go to a lending officer and they used to say like, oh, okay, yeah, I know Joe and I know his dad, he's good for this money, right? And it's like soft data based. Now, they go, here's your credit score, it's 700, you're approved. If it's 400, you're not approved. The soft data doesn't come into the equation as much. Trends in information systems, we talked a little bit about this, mobility, portability. We talked big, when we talked about that, we talked about Moore's Law. And what is Moore's Law? What is the impact of Moore's Law? What is Moore's Law all about? So that could be a good short answer question. What is Moore's Law? What does it mean? What is its impact? The law isn't important. The impact is important. What is Moore's Law? Jacob, go ahead. Okay, what Moore's Law technically was he said the number of transistors on an integrated chip will double every 18 months, roughly. Okay? Which you say, well, so what? What does that mean? Well, if we see the results of that, that means the price-performance ratio is unbelievable. It's exponential growth. So things that cost, $1,000 yesterday, in 6 months are down to $200, and then in 3 years are down to $1, right? And we talked about things like calculators and gaming consoles, where we really see that. I don't know if you guys remember, maybe you're little kids when the first flat screen TVs came out. That's not so long ago, but they were $3,000, $4,000 for a 30-inch flat screen TV. Now you get one at Walmart for $127, right? It's crazy. That's because of Moore's Law. It drives down the price of things and makes technology more ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Okay, it's everywhere. So that's what Moore's Law has done. We also talked about data, information, knowledge. That wasn't in your book, but we talked about data lends itself to information. Information is knowledge. Knowledge is power. We talked about tasks being structured versus unstructured, and things that computers are better at and things that people are better at. Computers are good at tasks that have a high degree of structure, that require repetition, right? That require processing power. Computers don't get tired. They do things exactly the same way every time. people are better tasked to take on judgment, common sense, emotion, feeling, right? So when we talk about pushing things from the computer side, the human side, the computer side, those are things that matter, okay? Those are things that matter. So all this is potential for multiple choice questions. Now, Chapter 2, same kind of study material. Chapter 2 of your text, PowerPoint slides, lecture, YouTube podcast. We talked about collaboration versus cooperation, and we used the example of student group projects because it's probably a great example of that, or painting a room. What's the big difference between, and this is I'm not even talking about information systems, but what's the big difference between collaboration and cooperation? What's the big difference there? What is collaboration? There's two words really that go with collaboration that don't happen in cooperation necessarily. Yes.
Collaboration is a common goal they're working for.
Okay. A common goal, right? And I could say that about cooperation too, right? If you paint that wall, Steve, and I'll paint that wall, and we'll have Chelsea paint that wall. We're all working to paint the room, right? That's cooperation, but collaboration is a little bit different.
You have feedback.
Feedback is one of the things, right? We have feedback and multiple iterations so that feedback improves each step of the way, right? Instead of saying, you write this section of the paper, you write this section, we'll throw it all together at the end, we say, well, let's have version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, and feedback all along the way, right? That is collaboration. And we have collaboration information systems. It's not just communication information systems, it's collaboration information. How we can work together, toward a common goal, but as part of that, get everyone's input, have multiple versions, get the best document out of this. So we talked about a lot of different types of communication systems, collaboration systems, and the one way we broke them up, the one way we differentiated between those is synchronous versus asynchronous, which is a good term to know in a lot of different things. What is synchronous versus asynchronous? What is synchronous versus asynchronous? Right now, go ahead, Alexis. Right. Right. This class right now is a synchronous class. When I recorded that lecture for Friday and told you guys to watch it at your leisure, that was an asynchronous lecture, right? You can watch it whenever, okay? So when we talk about information systems or collaboration information systems, we kind of think about that. And there's reasons to use each, right? There's reasons to use each. Sometimes we're working across time zones. Asynchronous is the way to go. Asynchronous sometimes have a bit more flexibility. When you take an online class that's asynchronous, you can do your work at 3 a.m. in Nebraska if you like. It doesn't matter. If it's synchronous, right, you have to maybe be online at a certain time. So we talked about those kind of things. And we talked a lot about email and its advantages and disadvantages. We talked about information overload. We talked about lack of nuance, lack of emotion, misinterpretation. Low cost was a positive. The fact that you can attach things, send it to multiple people, that's near instantaneous. All those things were advantages and disadvantages. They put a lot of that down. We did an example with Google Docs and Spreadsheet of a collaboration information system, right? You guys collaborated on notes, you shared some things, and as part of that, we talked about content management levels, okay? Content management levels, the book uses 3. I really group them into 2, like no control, and I kind of put these two things together because it's a fine line between what you call version management and version control. But no control is if I send you an email with an attachment and I send it to all the classes, there's no control because now we have 20 different versions of the same document, right? That's no control. Or I put something up on a shared server and say, have at it. That's no control. Version control, version management has some things, some features to it. The first thing it has is permission limited activity. When we use Google Drive or Google Docs, we said, I'm going to share this with these people and these people only, right? To have permission limited activity, this person can edit, this person can read it, this person can update it, whatever it might be. We have to have 2 things. We have to have authentication and authorization. Authentication is a way to prove you are who you say you are. Whether it's a password, a thumbprint, a retinal scan. And authorization is now we need a list of who's authorized to do these things, right? Google Docs has that. It has that feature. We also need version history. Remember we looked at our notes and I said, going over the file and said revision history, I could see that Marcus updated at this time and these are the changes he made. So now I don't have 20 documents, I have it layers on top of one another. You know, here's 50 versions of the same document, and here's what Eric added to it. Here's what Mr. Myers added to it. Okay, so version history. We also talked about document checkout. Okay, document checkout, which Google Docs really doesn't have that, but document checkout is a way to check out like you would a book and say, I'm editing this right now. It'll be back for public circulation in 3 days or 5 days or 7 days. And we also talked about workflow control. Okay, workflow control is, and really Google Docs doesn't have a good job of that either, but SharePoint, some other applications do, where we say, you know, I'm going to edit this document, then it's going to go to the next person in line, then it's going to go to the next person in line, and that could be sequential or in parallel. Okay, those were parts of a content management system. We talked about using collaboration information systems in the business world, and we talked about, you know, 4 main tasks that they're used for, and these things build upon each other. The lowest level is to become informed, right? To know what the hell is going on. The next level is decision making, because you can't make decisions well unless you're informed. Then we talked about solving problems. You can't solve problems unless you're empowered and they have the ability to make decisions. And managing projects, you can't manage a project unless you can become informed, make decisions, and solve problems. So those are the 4 main things that information systems, collaboration information systems, are used for in the business world. We talked about some examples of that. In organizations, we have 3 levels of decisions. We have operational, like how many more widgets should we order? How many pizzas should we stock for today? How many people should we employ on this shift? Okay. We have managerial decisions. Managerial decisions, you know, are maybe who does this task or what project we do. Strategic decisions are higher level. You know, should we merge with that institution? Should we offer a new product line? And when we talked about those, we specifically, when we talked about collaboration information systems, we said, what requires more collaboration? What level requires more collaboration? What requires almost none, Stephen? Strategic requires the most, right? Operational, you know, Karen just says, hey, I need a new pizza, or another pizza. That's all. It doesn't require much collaboration. But if we said, you know, strategically they want to offer another cart, okay, that's going to take a lot of people's buy-in, right? And they need to rely upon collaboration information systems a great deal. And often you find high-level executives in organizations, that's all they do all day is communicate and collaborate. That's all they do, right? They're not doing anything but communicating and collaborating. So that was Chapter 2. Now the bulk of the exam, because we spent the most time on that, will be on Chapters 1 and 2. There'll probably be from Chapter 3 and maybe 3 or 4 multiple choice, but that's it. Okay, not much at all from Chapter 3 because we didn't really spend a whole lot of time on it. But Porter's 5 forces, Porter's competitive strategies, what a business processes is, and that little slide about how ISs create competitive advantage. So, you know, those are the potential topics for the exam. 35 multiple choice worth 2 points apiece, and 4 short answers from these 11. Okay, so any kind of short answer you'll see will be from this list, right? So you know going in, these are the 11 possible short answers. And for my short answers, I'm not asking for, it's not going to be one word, not that short of an answer, but it's not an essay. You're not going to fill up a damn blue book on these, okay? What I want you to do is to show me that you understand the concept. If you can show me you understand the concept via a diagram, that's your answer, that's fine. If it's a bullet-pointed list, that's fine. I'm not going to grade that, hey, this isn't perfect narrative and prose, right? I want you to get to me that, hey, you understand this concept, you're able to answer this completely, okay? So it's not an essay type question, but it's also not a one-word answer. You guys get it? I don't know what you call that. I call it short essay, short answer, but it's not either of those, okay? So let's look at these. What are the 6 functions of every information system? Please list them, describe each, and provide an example of each. So this would be what? What are these? Capture, transmit, store, retrieve, manipulate, display. So that's listing them, right? Describing them would be capture is the way information systems capture data. Give me an example of capture. People, done. Okay? So you might put a little 3-column table and do that, right? That's fine. Okay? What are the 5 components in the 5-component framework? Hardware, software, data, procedures, people. Please list them, describe each, and provide an example of each. Why is it symmetrical? We talked about that. Actors, instructions, as well explain how systems process can be transformed from low-tech to high-tech by moving things from the people side to the computer side. What is the most difficult component to change and why? What do we say that was, Stephen? I think you answered that. People. Okay. Why? Because people don't like to change, right? Hardware is the easiest thing to change. You know, that computer dies, they can wheel one in, boom, it's done, right? That projector dies, boom, they put a projector, right? No big deal. People, harder to change, okay? List, briefly describe, and provide an example of each of the characteristics of good information. That was accurate, timely, relevant, good, not just timely, relevant, accurate, barely sufficient. That's just barely sufficient and worth its cost. Those are the characteristics of good information. Explain the type of tasks that are suited for computers and those that are better suited for people. Why? Get some examples. We spent some time on that on the board. We talked about structure, things that require repetitive action, high calculation. Briefly explain Moore's Law and its impact. We talked about that today. Explain the difference in the various levels of content management, include functionality that is commonly associated with that. That was permission level activity, versions, workflow control, and okay, I go to the fourth one now. Fourth one is document checkout, document checkout. Email, we talked about the advantages of email. Difference between synchronous and asynchronous communication. Provide an example of each. Advantages and disadvantages. What are the 3 types of organizational decisions according to your text? That's organizational, managerial, strategic. Provide an example of how IS are used to support the decision at each level. Describe an example of an organization that has used information system to create a competitive advantage. And how did it create that advantage? Explain in detail Porter's 4 competitive strategies and give an example. Organization uses that strategy. How can IS be used to support these strategies? All right, so those are going to have 4 questions. Okay, 4 questions of those 11. I will allow you guys to do via class collaboration. You can lock one in, meaning it'll definitely be on the exam, and you can eliminate one. Right now.
Locking Moore's Law.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys agree on the Moore's Law one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you'd pick one that was very, very open to BS, but that one kind of is, I guess, a little bit. Not that much. There's other ones that are more BS-y. All right, we'll lock that in. So number 5 will definitely be on there. Would you pick that just because they had the shortest?
Basic question.
Yeah. All right, that's locked in. Number 5 will definitely be on your exam. So know that one, Malik. That's 7.5 points right there. Which one would you like to eliminate? Alexis nominates number 11. Do I hear a second? All in favor?
Read this. I'm not done reading.
Oh, okay. Well, I read them all.
I know. I should re-go through them.
Eliminate number 11 then? All right, so you'll definitely see 5. You definitely will not see number 11. And you will see 3 of the other, 9. But know them all, right? You know them all, you'll be good.
So
Okay, I'll see you Friday. I know the football team may not be here. Anyone else traveling? For athletics?
Friday, right?
Are you football? Test is Friday. Yes, this Friday. Those people that are scheduled to present on Friday will present on Monday. Next week, we're also going to go to, you guys asked for it, I delivered. We're going to go to the 3D printing lab next week someday. So, yes, 3D printing. What kind of phone case? Yeah, you need a phone case based on the based on your previous phone. You need a life-proof one. You're not traveling? No. Okay. That issue.
I have a question about the stats project.
Yeah, sure.
I couldn't find where to get the histogram. And for some reason my thing keeps saying
Or
project
the data?
Yeah.
This is
This is the
St. Francis?
project. Yeah.
Go to File. Go to Options. Down. Go to Add-ins. Click on Go. Check those top two boxes. Okay.
Data analysis. Got it. I was looking
You
for.
should only have to do that once, Stephen.
Okay.
Did you do that in class?
Yeah.
And it went away?
Yeah. Just look. I have.
Yeah.
I have from.
Yeah, you did it,
one,
right?
Yeah.
You need gap. You need to get rid of the gaps there. You know that, right?
In there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Histogram.
This is the one we did in class.
Yeah. You need to get rid of the gap between the bars.
Oh, okay.
You know that, right?
Didn't know that, but I do now.
Yeah, histogram doesn't have a gap.
Gotcha.
So it's like the style mean, I think, doesn't have gaps.
All right.
All
I
right.
can do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, so I missed it?
Oh, you will be. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. See you then, Phil. I'll tell you. I'll email Mike Craig and see if he's willing to do that. So it'd be that's Deshaun, right? So it'd be you, Deshaun, and maybe Marcus. Right? He doesn't know yet. You're definitely going.
I will
Because
be
of the
there
kicker.
no matter what.
Because Lance is a kicker, right?
Yeah,
If
so-
he gets hurt,
Yeah.
you're up, right? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Because when I asked if I could just go. Because originally they were like same time as last week, and the bus left last week. We had to be